Hi, I'm Andreas Johansson. Most folks know me as AJ. I gave this presentation at the Firefighter Tracking Summit hosted by Orange County Fire Authority in April 2024. There were a lot of great vendor presentations, and we each only had 30 minutes to present. Many of my slides I rushed through, so I decided to remake this presentation to a recording. I'm not a vendor, I'm a fire captain for the Corona Fire Department, and here to talk about a free government program we've been using for the past 5 years for dismounted firefighter tracking and to improve our overall situational awareness. The app is called the Team Awareness Kit, or often referred to as TAC. In this presentation, I'll be covering the opportunities that TAC affords and a number of incidents that firefighters frequently respond to. A little about myself. I'm a 30-year fire service professional. I started my career with the United States Forest Service, spending 5 years on the El Carrizo Hotshots. I was the crew geek. I had an affinity for maps and radios. When we got our first GPS unit, I was the kid they threw it to. After the Forest Service, I went for 5 years with CAL FIRE, where I deployed as a field observer, collecting information for the situation unit. After leaving the Corona Fire, I stayed very connected to my wildland roots and became a situation unit leader on a CAL FIRE incident management team, where I spent 8 years deploying, and another 2 years on a local IMT as a SIT leader. I say all that because I've seen a lot of tech come and go, and TAC really excites me. Before I get into TAC, I want to discuss what I see as the 3 pillars of firefighter tracking and what lens I look through when looking at firefighter tracking solutions. The first pillar on the left is location. How is the technology determining your position? You really need to understand the difference between outdoor and indoor tracking and their complexities and limitations. When we think of outdoor tracking, we typically think of GPS, but GPS is not perfect. Outdoor issues can arise from deep natural canyons, canopy, and even urban canyons like being between a bunch of skyscrapers can cause issues with getting a GPS lock. Indoor GPS really degrades. The signal gets weaker depending on how the building is designed and the construction features. So for indoor tracking, your phone, as an example, can typically have other sensors like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to help increase its indoor location. This is what we usually call infrastructure acquired positioning. Google and Apple call this fused location services, and they're using this infrastructure to ping off these known locations to improve where it thinks you are in the building. And there are other additional hardware solutions that can link to a device to help better locate you in GPS denied areas, like going underground, for example. The next pillar is connection. Once you have your location, how are you sharing that location with other team members? Cellular, LMR radio, mesh solutions, and SATCOMs are many ways you can share this position information. Start thinking about, is this a one-way or bidirectional communication link? The third pillar is correlation. How does the software show relational information about you and the firefighters you're tracking? Is this one way, or can you communicate back? Are there tools that allow you to make better understanding about the relationship with the things around them? Now let's talk about how far we've come and where we're at today. In terms of a 30-year career, we'll take my start date of 1993. In 93, when I started, I would write down a call on a piece of paper. I would get a map page. I'd hop in a fire engine, look that up in the Thomas Brothers, and that's how we would route to the call. At the best in 1993, there might have been some advanced agencies that had a mobile data computer with a small screen that would tell you the location of the call at a map page, but there was no digital mapping in 1993. Now let's look back 1963. 1963, that firefighter was writing down the call and for sure using a paper map. So not a lot of change from 1963 to 1993. Now let's look at my career, starting in 1993 until now, a dramatic change in capability. So let's look at where we're at today. So a modern day GIS-based CAD, this call for service on the left, cell phone caller is calling in this house fire, it's reaching dispatch. Long are the days of triangulating that cell phone caller. Now the device is sending its GPS location to the dispatch center. And depending on how well that location service is, we can get very pinpointed information. Now, on the right, we have these fire engines out. They have a GPS receiver on them. And typically, a LTE or 5G cellular connectivity that's going back to the CAD. Now the dispatcher puts in the location of the call, and the CAD is recommending the right resources, and it's not recommending the closest resource. It's locating the quickest resource because it has the GIS map base, and so it knows how fast the road network is. And so you might think, oh, that resource is closer, but it might not be the quickest. And so the calls goes out, and now we have in the Fire engine, and we have typically a CAD client with a map on it. On the left, this is just a Windows Toughbook, and you can access layers, see other vehicles. On the right, that's tablet command running on an iPad. But we have all this great geospatial information: where the call is, where we're at, where the resources are, fire hydrants, as many layers as you can think that's in a GIS system you can put in here to visualize. And then we get to the call, and we're really good about knowing where the fire apparatus is, but once we get dismounted, and that's where the gap is. And that's what this presentation is all about. So when I'm talking about being dismounted, I'm talking about when you're a ways away from the fire engine. We're not talking you walked in from a medical aid into a residential structure or on the side of the freeway for a traffic collision, you're 100 yards from the fire apparatus. I'm talking about those incidents where it's hard to describe where you're at. You're not on the corner of 6th and Smith Street. You're up in the mountains. You're on the trail. This is typical in our wildfire scenarios, typical in our search and rescues. You may be on a pursuit if you're law enforcement and you've lost your orientation in a large complex. Or this could be at a large event like Coachella, where you're out in this huge area. There's not a lot of landmarks that you can reference other than these temporary buildings like by the popcorn shack. So now let's talk about where TAC fits in firefighter tracking. We'll talk about what is TAC, who's using it, where do you get it, how you connect with it, what you can do with it, and some incident examples. Now let's talk about where TAC came from. TAC was made for the warfighter and has transitioned extremely well for the firefighter and the crime fighter. As you can imagine, you're in a military unit and you're going overseas to a foreign country, you just can't hop on their local cellular network. Your position would be given away immediately. So you have to bring your own network. Many of the places we operate in wildland firefighting and search and rescue, we don't have network. So TAC is really good about riding on a multitude of networks. And it's really good at bringing different sensors in, like video and additional sensors to help with your location. So TAC is a geospatial situation awareness tool. It is a moving map application. Similar to Google Maps, if you're a wildland firefighter, you've probably used Avenza. Imagine using Avenza, but also seeing your friends, and anything you dropped on the map, you could send to them. It's born from the Department of Defense, Special Operations Community, and there's a civilianized version that we can use for domestic operations. It is a project from the U.S. Air Force Research Lab, and TAC is an acronym. So on the military side, they call it the Tactical Assault Kit, and on the civilian side, we call it the Team Awareness Kit. So TAC is a suite of applications. On the mobile side, we have Android or ATAC. On the iOS side, we have iTAC. Android is the mature version of ATAC on the mobile side. iOS is very new and very beta. All the screenshots you're going to see today are the Android version, and that's what we deployed at our department for the last 5 years. There is a browser-based called WebTAC, Windows-based called WinTAC, and there's soon to be TAC-X, which will be replace WinTAC and will be able to run on Linux, Mac, and Windows, and there's actually a virtual reality version as well called VTAC. One of the great things about TAC is this plug-in architecture. So there's this open Android SDK for ATAC. It allows you to take either a capability or a hardware piece that you have and build it into ATAC. Unfortunately, at this point, iOS does not support plugins. You have to bring it into the root application. But again, we've been using ATAC for the past 5 years, and it is a mature product, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So on the left here, you see this device called the TRX Neon. That allows you to link it to your phone, and this is a device that if you go into a GPS denied area like underground, can start keeping track. It has an accelerometer in it, of where you're at. So you go into a GPS denied area, you're still on network, your teams can still track you. This device, the next one over is from Somewhere Labs. This is called their Node device. That has a SATCOMS device and a small mesh radio in it. It also has a plug-in for ATAC. This is a Kestrel weather meter. We're all used to seeing that on the wildfire side. I'm working on a project now to bring that also into ATAC. And last on the right is the fire area survey tool. This is an example of functionality in ATAC. So this wasn't hardware that they brought in. This was functionality. What we've been used to with Avenza for years is going out and doing tracks of a wildland fire. So I'm going to hike it. I want to get the perimeter. ATAC didn't have a real, you could do it in ATAC, but it really wasn't easy to do. So State of Colorado built this fire area survey plugin, and now it's really easy to go capture tracks and send them out. The cool thing about doing this is if you have a number of agencies that are interested in a specific tool for ATAC or TAC in general, you can pool your resources or funding and build this out, and everybody wins. Now let's talk about who's using it. We got the military, of course, Customs and Border Patrol, FBI, Secret Service, federal, state, and local law enforcement, all big users of TAC. On the fire side, I mentioned we're using it at Corona Fire, and there's a handful of other local agencies throughout the United States using TAC. A larger front, you've got the state of Colorado building out their program they call COTAC. This will be available for all local agencies in the state of Colorado to use. And then the Forest Service is moving forward with their wildfire TAC, or WIF TAC it's called. And this is going to be a rollout over the next few years. You'll see it really mature, and they're using this to meet their requirements under the Dingle Act. So where do you get it? So you can go to tac.gov and register, and that's where you can get, on the Android side, what we call the APK, or the application, and the different plugins for TAC. It's also available on the Play Store for ATAC, so the Google Play Store. And on the iOS side, you can get on the App Store for iTAC. Additionally, if you hop on tac.gov, you can also get TAC Server. So let's talk about where TAC intersects this first pillar, the location pillar. So ATAC running on a phone is just using its GPS. So if you're outdoors, this works really well, and you have GPS location for the most part. Yes, I mentioned earlier, urban canyons, heavy dense canopy can cause problems, but for the most part, GPS works pretty good. You go indoors, now ATAC can take advantage of other sensors. So there are other applications that ATAC can intersect with that can bounce off Wi-Fi hotspots, triangulate off cell towers, so on and so forth. So when you get inside, that's where that can help. We're really looking forward to some other technologies that are coming out that are going to drastically increase the location accuracy while indoors using mobile phones. The example here below, right below that phone icon, is the Neon TRX I showed earlier. So now you're underground, and you can use this device that's linked to ATAC to better locate you. Next is that connection pillar. We're used to hearing the PACE plan, stands for primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency, when we're talking about operational considerations. If the fire gets here, we're going to do this. If it gets here, we're going to do this, so on and so forth. Start thinking about a PACE plan for connectivity. Now, everybody's primary plan is typically cellular. So where TAC really excels is it can be used on a variety of networks. So even if you lose cellular, you can still continue to operate. Now I call that the ACE card. We're most likely not going to have 3 additional means to communicate. So think about, when you lose cellular, what is your next solution? Pick one. And we're going to I'm going to show you a couple different variety of methods to use, but think about pulling out that ACE card. And when you're also looking at other applications, do they work without internet connectivity? So primary connection, most of us are using cellular. So LTE or 5G on any of these networks work. There is a middleware application called TAC Server that the devices will connect to. So I'm on FirstNet, you're on T-Mobile, another member is on Verizon. Well, how do we all talk? We're all connecting through the data plans to the TAC Server. Another application similar to TAC Server is called SIDX, which is a TAC server in the cloud. And you can be connected to many TAC servers. So one team could be on SIDX, another team on TAC server. We're all connected together in a cohesive atmosphere using these TAC devices. So that's with your primary plan on cellular. So now you've lost cellular, how are you going to connect? So ATAC wants to mesh natively. It was originally designed as a peer-to-peer tool. TAC server came later. So the military is bringing these local area networks out in the field. ATAC discovers other ATAC users on the same network. You can simulate this today on your home Wi-Fi. Take ITAC, ATAC, put them on the same Wi-Fi network, and they are going to auto-discover each other using something called multitask. So how you do this out in the field, we're not taking our Wi-Fi routers out there in the field. Here's a couple solutions here. On the left is Beartooth. That little radio out there uses Bluetooth connection to the phone, and it builds out this little network, and other devices will see each other. The one in the middle is called Gotenna, and the one on the right is from Somewhere Labs, all using some sort of mesh technology. And now let's talk about the MAN-A radios or mobile ad hoc networks. There are a bunch of different brands that do this. If you're a vendor and you're watching this, I'm sorry if I forgot your solution, but these are high bandwidth radios, allow you to push video over them as well as your location and chat. And there's also some LMR radio solutions. Motorola isn't building this, but a company called Plugnix is building a solution to use the Motorola radio and also ICOM. So you'll be able to send your location over these radios. Another cool solution that's coming around the corner is from Ditto. This is going to be peer-to-peer communications over these devices. So it could be ITAC to ATAC, ATAC to ATAC. It really doesn't matter. And it will forward messages across these devices. So if you're in a somewhat localized area and you want to send a message to someone that's further away, as long as all these devices are linked together, you can get that message to them. This is no additional hardware necessary. That is one cool thing about the Ditto protocol. That will be coming out pretty soon. There's also satellite. So both Somewhere Labs and Garmin InReach have a way to share your location and chat and points on a map over SATCOMs. And this is around the corner. This is that SAT to phone. So you've got Link. You also got Starlink, which is a partner with SpaceX and T-Mobile. And then you've got AST is partnering with FirstNet. So you'll be able to use your phone without any additional hardware and link to satellite. So this is satellite is going to be broadcasting cellular signal, and so when you're out of terrestrial or regular, ground-based cellular connectivity, you'll be able to hop onto these networks. So I think this is going to be a big game changer for us. Last is this correlation pillar, and this is where TAC really excels in doing digital mapping, overlays, geofences, tracking other forces. So it doesn't have to be an ATAC device. You can bring in a variety of location services in ATAC and push it to the device. So I could take my AVL out of my CAD and push it to TAC. So it doesn't have to be born from TAC to show up in TAC. And you can collect data collection, points, lines, polygons. You got chat, weather input, augmented reality, remote sensing. We'll show some live video and still images, IP cameras, aircraft, and UAS FMB. All right, field deployment. This is just a picture showing, tablets and phones, some of the accessory hardware out there that you can have. And we'll talk about some incident responsibilities. So notice I got structure fire in kind of red here with a question mark. My biggest fear about attack and structure firefighting is people thinking they can just throw their phone in their turnout pants or turnout pocket and think they're going to have good location services. I mentioned earlier the GPS doesn't do a whole lot indoors. It can cause some false positives. It could show that someone's in the building when they're not, so on and so forth. So GPS indoors, not a great solution. There are some things that are coming out in the near future that are really going to improve that with the mobile technology. So these other ones, though, are really great for TAC. The wildland fire, remote area rescue, wide area searches, confined space rescue, hazardous materials, swiftwater rescue, that tactical response, and planned events. We'll kind of go through these. This is just showing what the ATAC end user device or EUD looks like. So those colored dots on the map are devices. You can see some geospatial properties here. You can see we've brought in, this is our city of Corona boundary. You can see Riverside Air 1, their helicopter flying around, and you can see some alert wildfire cameras. This is just using Google's Street Map as the base layer. And you can see the lower right-hand corner, it shows my location. This is just showing some AVL. So this comes from the Department of Interior. So this is their Skymira satellite AVL. So they're pushing that out, and then another service is bringing that in to ATAC. Similar showing AVL out of CAD into TAC. So this is some stuff for wildland fire I think that could really be helpful. The AVL services, that dismounted personnel tracking, our chiefs really like it because they can see a dot on the map, and if I say, hey, I'm 100 feet from the head on the left flank, they can start really understanding, okay, where the fire has progressed to. They can match that radio transmission with the location. But obviously you can draw up the map, points, polygons, and lines, mark the perimeter, draw objectives like the box, calculate acreage, mark hazards, put some operational boundaries in there. And then you can leverage a lot of existing data. So if you've got KML streams, TAC can use that stuff, stuff from FIRIS, MODIS, Esri, and some geospatial maps. This is just an example of using maps that were typically made to print, just GeoPDFs, can be right into TAC. This is an example of a local fire here. It's me parked in the driveway, that marker that says AJ's tab. And just based on radio transmission, so what I could see, I started drawing the map, division boundaries, and then the next day or later on in the day, we hiked it, and now we have a much better understanding where the fire's at. This red shaded area is SRA. Down here on the left is Cleveland National Forest, FRA, and you can see we got this fire's mixed of LRA and SRA. And this yellow boundary here is our city boundary. So, and you can share all this in real time between members. This is an example of a large wildland fire. This is the Creek Fire 2020. And these devices up here have no cell connectivity, and they're using Somewhere Labs pucks to transmit their location. You can put it in 3D view if you're used to Google Earth, and you can even put the ops map in 3D view as well. It does have a weather plugin. You can bring in weather, like red flag warnings. And this is just showing kind of the weather plugin. You can also bring in the red flag warning on the right. On the left, you've got a picture of the ops map and then a radar on top of it. Another example of tracking Hurricane Ian and this radar information. Remote area rescues is something we use a lot in Corona with TAC. It's really shined here. This we're getting that location service is very accurate from Rapid SOS. We drop it in the map and then share it across the team. This is another example of outside data that we brought in. So this is open source mountain bike trails from Trailforks map, out of the Trailforks app. I exported it as a KML and bring it into TAC, and we labeled it. And now when someone calls 911, like this one here, they were on the Troy Lee Trail. You can see the patient lined up right on that trail. So someone may come down and say, hey, my buddy's on the trail. Maybe they didn't have good cellular connection to the top to tell us the name of the trail. Real easy for us to see. Just an example of us tracking crew. This is September 11, 2021. We have a hiker call in and say they're in distress, and I captured this from my office of a couple things here, which is pretty neat. This heat cold exposure icon, that's coming from CAD, marking the call. You can see the ATAC users. I'm tracking them hike up. We've marked the caller where they called from, and we're bringing in AVL as well. So wide array search plugin, this is showing some of the utility in TAC, building out some capability. This was a need that came from the National Guard. They wanted the ability to go out and mark up structures based on their damage, what they could see, and have that available on a map. And then also tactical response is another use case. We'll show that plugin in use here in a couple slides. So tactical response, 10 years ago when we started this, these are just printed maps that sat in the back of a battalion chief's vehicle. And if you had to get to classroom J102, you'd have to look at that and go, okay, where is that at? Where am I at? And how do I get there? The hot zone would be, basically told over the radio, hey, don't go to the gym. Well, where is the gym? I don't go to this school all the time. So now you can see right here with this green marker, maybe where we want someone to go. Maybe there's someone hurt over there, and we've got the hot zone located here. So these are maps that were never meant to be geospatial, but they were made in an Esri ArcGIS at the time, ArcMap, prior to ArcPro, but we export them to TAC, and they line up perfectly. And this is showing us using trying to find a way where we can start marking up, buildings where victims are, and we're using this wide array search plugin. This platform will be actually built out to support active shooter responses in the near future. So this is just some slides showing some markups we made on a PDF map and doing a drill. So you can see the classroom numbers, you can see the ATAC user, and us marking up the map and victims. So just some kind of, I wouldn't call it out of the box, but trying to find a way to leverage these tools to make better sense of these incidents and what's happening and where it's happening. So this was so powerful that we reached out to the local school district and said, hey, we're making these maps, but we think there's a better way to do this. Critical response group, they make these maps very professionally done. You can see the level of detail you get. They overlay perfectly in TAC. So the school district hired CRG to map all 50 schools. Another use case is using this in a confined space. So using the SNE TRX in a GPS denied area, using mesh devices and our VHF radios to be able to keep track of where people are at. This is just a picture of our first due guidebook. So this is just showing hazmat response. This is meant for that first in company officer to start making some initial decisions. And one of those is, okay, well, what's leaking or what is the hazard? Is it a solid, liquid, or a gas? So if it's liquid and we say we want a 150-foot perimeter, well, what does that look like, especially at night? Well, if you can find the object that's leaking, then on a map, then you can in ATAC real easily just say, hey, put a 150-foot circle right here, and boom, share it across the team. So now you could tell people, hey, don't go inside this 150-foot circle, and everybody sees it. You could even make this a geofence. Anybody who's using ATAC, you would give you an alarm if they walked inside of it. And then you can build out the rest of your response. Hazmat flu modeling works good. This is coming right out of Aloha, very common application with ATAC. So it puts out a KMZ, we were able to import it. Swiftwater Rescue, just showing another example of an incident where we are dismounted. We get that location, we park the fire engine, we're dressed in all our gear, now we're moving down the river. And so this is an example of other geospatial data that already existed in our CAD terminal, and we were able to bring it right into TAC. So these are all the Swiftwater rescue points, and you also get the metadata with it. Some other examples, some situational awareness feeds, video, database. We'll talk about computer-aided dispatch, remote sensing, and mapping engines from UASs. So this is an example of just camera feeds that California Highway Patrol and DOT already put out. So these are just still feeds that update like every minute. They came right into TAC perfectly. Also, video feeds also work well. So this is, I want to point out, you can see in some of the different slides, the user interface looks a little different. This is from the old user interface, ATAC 4.6 updated. It's a different user interface. So I wanted to explain that. But back to this slide, this is showing that, hey, maybe you have an incident that is right in one of these open source camera feeds. You could leverage that. This is showing, this is the CAD feed from California Highway Patrol. So this also drops geospatially, and you get all the metadata with it coming out of the CAD. This is just showing using Modus coming from the firm's system. This is Modus plus Alert Wildfire Cams. So you're able to kind of look at where that's at and look at some live video as well. This is showing the UAS deployment. So you're actually able to fly your drone in ATAC. And what you're seeing here is that's on a prescribed fire. And on the right here, or if you look on the map on the left here, you can see this EGP engine 3648. Well, in the video, it's also overlaid using augmented reality. So it's hard to see the vehicle down there, but it's saying, hey, that's who that vehicle is. So pretty powerful with the video player and augmented reality in ATAC. This is just showing a drill we did, a night drill, getting our boats out there and using our drones. So little Johnny doesn't come home fishing, and last seen is at this lake, and the drone located him, marked it, and then was able to mark it for the boat team to go out and rescue. So it really, when you find a location, especially from aircraft, it's real easy to mark that and show the teams where it's at. This is just showing what geospatial video looks like in TAC. So this is a helicopter that's filming a truck driving down the road, and you're able to see where that's at in real time in ATAC. So pretty powerful. This is an example that came in 2019 on a fire. So in ATAC, you can track other things. You can track other users. I showed that example before. But what we didn't have was the ability to track the sensor's position. So what you're seeing up top here by this flag, you can see this little sensor icon, and that's actually going up to an MQ-9 at about 21,000 feet. And so what we asked for was, hey, can I start dropping tracks off the sensor? So as the sensor operator is tracing this fire here, drop a track. So now we kind of have this real-time perimeter, and then I'm able to actually do a little bit of measurement. All right, how far is that from the nearest homes? So just another example of using TAC in some kind of new ways. This is showing ortho imagery. So on the left here, we flew a mission in our drone, and we wanted some updated mapping, and it overlays directly. And then just showing a map shot on the right. This is just a trench drill we were doing. This kind of shows off the power of that kind of post-event imagery. So pre-event Google imagery, this is where you're going for your mission for the day. And that's what it would look like, because that's the last capture from Google, say, in the last year. Well, now you've got a UAS flight, and now you've got new imagery, this is from the campfire, this could be your new base map. So you know what this, you have this new fresh imagery, what it looks like on your map. Just showing off the alert wildfire cameras. You know, we brought in all of those, over 1,000 cameras into TAC. So in this picture on the left, you've got you know, an operations map from the Caldor, updated flights, these green marks here from Firefighter, all the aircraft in here, and the cameras. Pretty powerful. Showing using alert wildfire cameras with the field of view and kind of getting an updated location of where the fire's at. So just doing a little cross of the two cameras, and that's where the fire is. Another example of just CAD AVL into TAC. Pulse point feeds. So we were getting trying to get data out of CAD, and we realized, wait, pulse point's already sending to CAD. Why don't we just intersect it there? And so you can see we're getting some of the metadata with it as well. So this is a sick person. We're running ATAC on our EMS tablets, so you can see there's this orange is an EMS tablet running ATAC, and the phone is still in the fire engine. Another powerful thing we built into TAC is bringing in aircraft tracking. This is kind of an older image. We've got new icons now, but from ADSB Exchange is a company that collects all of this aviation data. So now in ATAC, you've got both horizontal and vertical separation of aircraft. You can see at the top we have Firefighter, and then down below we have the AirTAC, and then below that the air tankers and the rotor wing aircraft. On the right, picture from Alert Wildfire Cam. And this is what the icons look like now. So you know, you can see this Copter 301 here from CAL FIRE. It's got this red line under it. That means it's fire-based, and rescue means it's got hoist capabilities. And then you've got Ontario PD up here. That's rotoring aircraft by this little kind of bow tie looking icon, and then it's got a blue icon underneath it. And just an example of another tool you can do in ATAC is get live ETAs. So this is Firefighter is inbound to this fire. There's a tool called Bloodhound in here where I'm able to click on it, and then it'll just keep track of their speed and what their estimated ETA is based on their speed and their current location. And you can do that on multiple aircraft. An example of us building out ADSB receivers on an incident. So you could be in an area where you don't have good ADSB network coverage. Well, this is just us leveraging it out on an incident. This is where a normal NIFC cache repeater would be. You put up an ADSB receiver, and now we've got better surveillance of aircraft on a wildfire. Marine VHF, AIS is called Automatic Information System. It's transponded by vessels over the VHF. Just like ADSB Exchange, there are companies that aggregate this data, and you can bring it right into TAC. And there's also tools that you can use standalone, like that picture I showed before, local receivers that you can bring this data right into TAC. So if you cover the waterways, this is a great tool. This is showing off the integration we did with Firefighter. This is the Fire Integrated Real-Time Intelligence System, a project that came out of Orange County Fire Authority from Chief Fennessy, and eventually transitioned to CalEOS and CAL FIRE. A good partnership between Natera, AVEX. And so what we did was starting to leverage some of the data that was coming out of it. So in this picture here, we have this KML network link. So as they're airborne and they collect the data, they're now pushing it to Natera, and Natera has created a KML network link. In ATAC, we just have it drawing on that feed every 60 seconds. So once they publish, the longest you'll wait is 60 seconds to get the next perimeter. So what you see here is a fire, the gym fire, and this is the latest perimeter. And then you're also to bring up some other context with it, like where are the aircraft at. This was a fire that happened a couple months after another fire, so we just brought up the last ops map from that incident off the FTP site, loaded it, and then you can immediately see where this new fire was, and then obviously on the right you see some video. if you're using the Slack channel in Firefighter, on the left, you can see what that looks like. Hey, I've got these images, but now you can bring those images geospatially in ATAC. So I'm able to download that off Slack, use the import feature in ATAC, and now I've got the image of where that's at. And now I want to do some measuring off that image. So, all right, how far, I can see this green area here is using another layer. We see this is in the FRA, and now I'm using the measuring tool. I can see it's 7 miles from SRA, which is this red area, and I've got a camera on as well showing the field of view. You can see the fire out here. This is a real story of me using Firefighter data in ATAC. This is the 71 freeway looking north. We had a strong orange storm wind, if you're familiar with this area, right along the freeway, a lot of light grass, light brush. And then this burns downhill to the right to the Prado Basin. And when you get down to that road there, you can see where the fire kind of hung up. Very thick vegetation, jungle-like, very tall trees. I was then being Division Alpha, left flank. We had the flanks tied in quick with the aircraft. It kind of hung up on the road, and I said my next priorities right now are getting these spot fires that I could see. All I could see was just these headers through the trees. So air attack mustered the Type 1 helicopters, and they just squashed those things really quick. I immediately lost situational awareness of where those were at, because my situational awareness cues of where they were based on those kind of smoke columns. And so brought up ATAC, you could see that Firefighter had mapped all 3 spots. And so it was really easy to determine that, hey, we had 3 crews, 3 different spots, and we didn't leave anything behind. That vegetation is so thick that you could easily, maybe dump some water on it, snuff it for a little bit, but it might come alive again a few hours later if you didn't mop it up and line it. So this is real life using Firefighter data on the line. And this is what the video looks like from Firefighter and ATAC.
Hey, in this Tax Syndicate video, I'm going to show you the new capabilities in the AVO plugin for ATAC 4.10. Right now you can see Firefighter is flying this fire down in San Diego. You can see the aircraft, the slant angle, and the sensor point of interest. On the right, you can see the live geospatial video. And you can see right now it's at, the fire's at this Chuck Wagon Road lane and San Vicente Road. And you can see that it's picking up a spot fire just across the road here. So normally in the AVO plugin, or as you'd get geospatial video, the map does not stay in sync with the video. So as the aircraft is spinning around and the sensor is changing, the map stays still. And as right now, you can see that the video is kind of turned. And normally what you'd have to do is spin the map to try to get it to match. So I would hold down on the north arrow here, and I would have to rotate it manually. And now now it's got it north again. So now in the AVO plugin, if you hold this icon that's left of the degree heading, and I hold that down, now it's going to lock the map to the camera. So now if I lock onto the SPI, now that map is going to spin right with the camera. So that can be really helpful in trying to understand, like, all right, well, I've got the video where I want to get my orientation correct. So a great new capability in this AVO plugin. Hats off to the folks at Par Government for baking that in there at end user request. And this is going to bring a lot of value to watching a live geospatial video, especially on these fires from the Firefighter program. Thanks for watching.
So yeah, that's a video I had on my YouTube channel showing off this new capability in the AVO plugin. Another example of plugins plus how quick we're able to turn around some capability requests with the TAC Product Center. Wi-Fi modeling, so any modeling that you have, it could be, this is from Wi-Fi, but it could be from Technosil, but it really doesn't matter. You can drop that in here. We have this as a KML network link. My buddy Rich Rose in CAL FIRE running ATAC at the time. Never good to see your friend in a wildland fire spread model. I mentioned earlier using LMR radio, so being able to send the location through LMR using the PlugNix app. And this radio on the right is the new version of Motorola called the Next. It is actually running Android on the back end, and you can load ATAC on it. This is just a video showing, these are two radios. These devices have no cellular on them, and we're sending shapes from one device to the next. So this slide is why I do this. This is the Granite Mountain deployment site, the Vitality site. And if you've ever watched that, the after action video that came out of NIFC, it has the audio in it, and the audio transcripts, and you can hear the superintendent, screaming in the radio. There's wind into it. He's trying to read out his lat long. Ultimate confusion from other responders on the line about other crews. Hey, we thought you were over here. Why are you here? A lot of confusion about where they're at. And we had a DC-10 fully loaded above that point. Now, the argument that I get a lot from other folks that say, hey, we have rules of engagement. People are hurt and injured because they ignore rules of engagement. And I don't disagree with that. Human factors are what they are. Humans are going to make mistakes. But where I see technology is not that you're asking Siri, hey, is it safe to go down here and do this? But when we make mistakes, maybe technology might afford a better outcome. Maybe one day Big Brother is watching you and starts to check in with you because the systems know where the fire is, and someone asks you, hey, what are your intentions? The direction you're hiking is an intersection for disaster. Or when you are calling for help, that there isn't this confusion about where you are, and we can muster a response quickly to hopefully prevent a tragedy. STAC is not a silver bullet. It does a lot of stuff, and you can bring in a lot of different data into it. But if you pound that square peg in that round hole, and what comes out on the end is missing some context in ATAC, then by all means switch apps. Use a native app. It is not perfect. We all have hundreds of apps on our personal phones that all do specific things. So this is not a zero-sum game. It doesn't mean that you can't use ATAC besides tablet command, so on and so forth, or an Esri application to collect data. Choose your app on here. But ATAC does afford a lot of capability that is worth exploring, especially at the price. ATAC is free from the government for you to deploy. They're not going to buy your phones. Of course, you have to buy phones, but the software itself is free and very powerful. So thank you for watching. My contact info is up there, as well as the website, thetacsyndicate.org. That is my personal website where I share information about TAC. The QR code on the left will take you there, and then the QR code on the right will take you to my LinkedIn connection. Thanks for watching.